Oh, excellent. We have a wonderful guest today who is going to get to hear my soothing, sultry voice since I'm getting over a cold and I'll be having plenty of tea. But we have Jesse Hile. And Jesse, I would just love it if you could just introduce who you are and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for creating the space and having me here today. I appreciate it. Jesse Hile. I reside here in Indiana on the far west side in a small town called Terre Haute. For those NBA basketball players, Larry Bird went to college here at Indiana State, so that's sort of our claim to fame. But I have a very untraditional career path in many different tech startups, high growth startups, family business, universities and schools, and it's led me to meeting Daryl along the way at one of those education startup companies. And uh, at that point, I got introduced to a executive coach at one of them, who at that time I think I was only about 29 or 30 years old, and I said I want to be you when I grow up, and how do I do that? And so it's funny the paths of where everything's taken us, but followed Daryl for many years, been great friends with him for over a decade, and watched him grow. So right now who I am being and who I'm serving on many different levels and capacities are individuals, high elite performers, want to get into really being a private advisor for professional athletes as the ultimate goal with my coaching. But right now serving also kindergarten through fifth graders through an education technology company that I built, that is really taking off right now. So have a balance between that, and I've really AJC has really helped me really hone in on what being full looks like at that capacity. And then also my coaching business, which is next level guidance, and what that looks like for businesses and individuals on the corporate side and the business side of things. So it's interesting as I'm still learning the path and journey and really honing in on it and stuff. And then I have my day job that and where I do corporate fundraising for school corporations, underserved community schools, on under-resourced areas and communities in Detroit and Indianapolis, specifically. So, but yeah, so I serve a lot right now, but really crafting it, and this opportunity alone has really been so beneficial in many ways of just really who I'm being and who I need to truly be, and dive into that. But looking forward to diving in it all with you. Long introduction.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think it's divine timing because I believe I'm interviewing Daryl next,
Oh,
who is
nice.
also in the AJC. Yeah, he's also in the AJC and a mentor. And so I believe his episode after I interview him will be coming out after yours. So I think that's some
Fantastic.
divine timing.
It
Yeah.
really is.
And yeah, it really is. And I love that you have really experienced success and growth in so many areas. And so that'll be great to see how that comes into your journey of what you found most helpful to generate conversations, to create clients. And I love what you're talking about of who do we need to be to do that, to create that. Because we're always being some way, wherever we are and or whomever we're with, including with ourselves. And yeah, I love this. And for anyone listening, if this is their first time listening, this is well, I'm James Wightman, and this is a special series that I'm doing, interviewing some of the best coaches in the world, and those also in AJC because we're filled with some of the best coaches in the world, and understanding what does each person do to generate conversations to create clients, because a lot of times we kind of have our bread and butter, the thing that we found has worked, but what happens if we listen to kind of what each person does, or who they're able to be, or what they're able to step into, and you're able to bring that into your own business in very practical ways. Um, so I'm excited for this conversation, and thank you to Ankush for creating the AJC and bringing us all together. And so I'm thankful to be here with you, Jesse. And so when you, um, when you first reached out, right? And I opened this up, or we connected, and I bridged that idea of generating conversations. What does that mean to you, or what comes through for you in that, in terms of your journey?
Yeah, I really love this in so many ways because I feel like I've learned an incredible amount in such a short period of time through AJC, and also Daryl, who's been very foundational for me. And when I go back, and when you said you wanted to create conversation and this is what we'd be discussing, I mean, really, the funny thing is to me, when I first started hired Daryl as my coach a couple years ago now, over a couple years. Uh, I remember at the very beginning, he kept saying, he kept asking me, who do you need to be to create that? And like, who do you need to be? And like, being. And I was like, if he says being one more time, I'm going to freak out. And I didn't understand the concept, and just the principle and the true state of being and what that really means at a deep level. And the more work I dove into him, and even through this school, it's an ever continuous work, as you know, working on ourselves and being. But, what really got me launched in coaching, Daryl, one, has been the most biggest cheerleader for me in my corner than anyone on this planet. And I mean that wholeheartedly, in the coaching realm, and as a friend as well. But our paths crossed in 2014 when we were working at an education technology company, and things didn't work out with that. And he was just there as a good leader, a good mentor for me, in those times. But staying in touch with him and then watching him grow his coaching practice, and it's something that I wanted to start right when he was starting too, but I don't know, I didn't know where to begin. And then years went by. I was like, I'll do it next year, I'll invest in it next year. But I just kept seeing him grow in his success. And you know the thing that really got me, just a little nudge, was a former colleague of mine at a startup, which is still around, which is really blossoming and stuff now. And he's a vice president of it. But he called me one day and he said, "Hey, Jesse," he goes, "Are you coaching yet, like full time, or are you taking on clients or anything?" And I was like, I think I'm at that point now. I go, "What's up?" He goes, I'd like to hire you." I had no anticipation or anything, and at that point in time, I was only doing um, pro bono coaching, right? And just I had nowhere to start. So that's when I called up Daryl, and Daryl's been gracious and it's always takes my phone calls and stuff over the years, and has always tried to get me to, you really need to do this, you really need to do this. So I called him, and you know, I had been struggling with financial debt, and I just didn't know if I had money to invest into a coach or get a coaching certification, what it all meant. And I looked into IFC, or what's the other, IPEC, and like all of those. And Daryl's like, I'm not hard selling you here, but with your experience, your background, your life experiences in general, I can get you there quicker. And he's like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 48 hours to, if you want to make a decision, and I'll keep a space for you. So and this is a fun journey part, but when I decided to go all in, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to afford, the fees there. So I went to the bank, looked at the mortgage. That was another 48-page life sentence away, and I didn't want to do that. And they're like, "Do you have a vehicle paid off?" It's like, "Yeah." And just so happens one of the vehicles I had paid off, I could take a lien out on it for the exact amount of the fees that I could, use to pay Daryl with. So when I did that, I was all in. And when I look back at it all, and I love the space that you're creating of just looking at conversations in general, it was truly just who I was and who I was being for John, who was my first client, who decided to hire me. And it was just conversation and me being very open and vulnerable and empathetic, and how I really show up myself as a leader. And so that's when I was like, Daryl, I got someone banging on my doors to hire me. I need to understand this way of being and this coaching more. So that's when I decided to, hire Daryl myself. And from there, it just really snowballed of when I truly look back at how I got my first, handful of clients. and still continue to this day, is just literally being in conversation and creating a magical space for, people of instant vulnerability. Like when I meet with someone, I just be me and I share my story, and then that does it. That evolves into so many other things. I don't go in with the intentions of being attached to any outcomes. It's just, how can I show up and serve? How can I show up and just truly be myself? And to give another prime example of one of the first clients, I was up in Iceland with my brother. Beautiful place, by the way. Highly recommend going if you have not been. Um, and I was sitting in a surreal environment with one of the hot springs that was like infinity that overlooked the ocean. It was in the morning having a mimosa, and there was this older gentleman, and he saw my necklace I had on, and he's like, "Oh, are you Lutheran?" I grew up Lutheran, and this is something my grandma gave me, and I was like, "Yeah, believe it or not," and he's like, "Oh, his name was Thor Stur. He's from Iceland, great guy," and we just start talking, having a conversation, and he was telling me all this stuff, and he was like, "Where are you from?" And I go, "Indiana." He goes, "Oh, where at?" It's like, why is someone from Iceland asking where at in Indiana? But I told him Terre Haute. He goes, "Well, actually, half time of the year I live in South Bend, Indiana, which is only 3 hours north of me." I was like, "Oh man, small world." And I start talking with him, and just a lot of commonalities. And he was telling me some challenges he was having. He was a pastor at a church there, and they were starting an organization for restoring musical instruments, high quality instruments to be able to provide to, you know, children who may not have access to those kinds of instruments. So, in my space in the nonprofit world, one thing led to another, conversation led to another, ended up hiring me to be a coach for their pastor they brought in from Haiti who was overseeing it, Rashid. Conversation again just goes back to me being me, sharing my story and being vulnerable, and that's really been the theme of how I've gotten my conversations. The ones where I've gotten all my no's from, I was really coming from a place of attached outcome. Like, oh, I got to get this. This will be a huge corporate client, or I really want to coach this person. And I look back at all my no's, and I can really analyze and go into detail of like, well, I wasn't being me. I wasn't serving coming from that place, and I was expecting an outcome from it. And all the other ones where it's just been natural have been the ones I've been working with. And those are the tens anyway that I want to work with. So, but yeah, that I would say, long-winded answer to your question of conversations where I've been, but that's how it really has naturally progressed for me. And the more I've really delved into this school and really being in the school, and I didn't even join AJC to create and build and grow my practice. I did it more so on a personal level of what I was going through and working on at the time. And Ankush really said, this would even be a better fit for you for that. And I was like, really? And I went in a little skeptical of like, how could it be? But out of all the conversations and amazing relationships, the people I've met, such as yourself and stuff, has just been phenomenal and wonderful place for me, and it's allowed me to really compartmentalize in a good way of you know what looks full, more clarity, more peace, and more gratitude. I have a little game I play. The game, gratitude, attitude, mindset, and effort are the four greatest attributes to one's success. Like that's sort of like my internal thing. And when I really give it up to being thankful for this very second with you, for a blade of green grass or the snow or whatever it is, that's where things really shifted in my life, in so many great ways.
Mm. Wow, that is so powerful. And if it's okay with you, we're probably going to be spending the rest of the call kind of breaking this down, because there's so much gold in what you're sharing that I think it's funny. It's almost so simple, but perhaps so unnatural for people from cultural conditioning that it's easy to overlook. And there's, whether it's a client of mine, there's some conversations that have been arising, or something that I'm hosting that I notice questions that people have been asking. And so I'd like to bring kind of that context to what you're sharing. So I want to share with you what I'm getting from what you're saying that I think will really translate over to those listening. And I also have some questions. So this
Absolutely.
is thank you so much for sharing that. So some some key things that I'm really hearing you sharing is you were really you, right? It's so easy to get caught up in what's the strategy, or I want this client, or I want the big thing, and instead you really tuned into yourself, focused on being honest, sharing your journey, your story with people. And that also includes not being boxed in to a way of dressing or what you're wearing, but really um, being you, like you said, the necklace that your grandmother gave you, that's something important to you, and you wear it, and you're traveling to the place that you want, and through that you're naturally connecting with people. You're create and from that, conversation is happening, whether it's about a necklace that you're wearing or the story that you're sharing. You're just being you in all the places that you are. And that, I don't want to use the word attracts, but there's a natural connection that happens. There's an energy there that I imagine people feel, because if somebody's in a down state, or I need the strategy, or I need this thing, in their mindset they're already creating a distance between themselves and what they would actually desire for their life. And you're sharing an appreciation that you have, whether it's the blade of grass in front of you. And I imagine that's an active appreciation, something you bring a practice to, because it is easy to um, step off path in our life, right? And to simply step back on to appreciation and who you're being. So that's what I'm hearing from what you're sharing, and the power in that. Am I
May-
getting that correct?
yeah, may I add something to that?
Yeah.
So it wasn't always like that for me. I used to suffer from severe anxiety, depression, panic attacks. Um, and it's been a lot of self work. And when I really stepped into this state of being and really being exposed to the space that Ankush has created through the Steves and, and being with Daryl, going through my document with Daryl was so foundational in who I am today, and what it's created for me in that peace and clarity. And it's allowed me to not be a chameleon that I used to be. Like I would be this friend for this friend group, this friend for that friend group, instead of just being, and same thing into my work life. So that I wanted to say that clearly of, I used to not be this way, and the work and Kai's message this morning, how beautiful was that? Don't know if you've seen that yet, in our
I
group
did
meet.
not.
Beautiful, just testimony he shared of just his way of being and where he identified things, but just work like that, and what it's allowed me to be able to get out of my own way and create in my life has just been just incredible.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I'm also understanding that part of that journey, right? Just like you said, the person that you were talking to that asked if you were coaching, and they were interested in hiring you. You talked about coming up with the money to pay for
Mhm.
Daryl. And I'm hearing something really important that I think people don't talk a lot about, whether it's in business or coaching, is that you made a commitment to what you wanted to create, and we're willing to explore all options to create that. I'm also hearing that you didn't treat it as, oh, maybe this thing will work in the next 6 months, and if it doesn't, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. You had a sense of commitment to to yourself and what you wanted to create, that you were going to keep with it, that you were going to focus on it. And yeah, maybe that meant that you had to do other things to come up with money. Or I know some people, they might be, they might work a part-time job, or whatever it might be, that there's other things, but you kept your attention focused on what you wanted to create and were committed to, rather than treating it as this thing of, I'll see if it works. Do I have that right?
Yes, 100%.
And I say that because I think it's pretty common in the coaching industry for people to, oh, they really enjoy learning. They enjoy the certifications and the learning and those types of things. But it's very easy to take attention off of the the growth on the business side, the commitment, the testing one's edges. Um, Also, the rubber to the road. Now that you learned it or know it, or you heard some information, uh, applying it. And so I'm hearing that you really did a wonderful job of saying, well, this is the next step. I'm not sure exactly what it looks like, but I'm going to take it. Or I'm not sure what's going to happen after I take this money out in relationship to my car, but I'm committed to figuring this out. And this is the path that I'm on. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there more you want to share related to that?
Yeah, absolutely. To that path, of being committed and all in, and being my word to me. Um, when I did that, that was a big commitment because I've always used to wrestle with being in debt. And when I first started this journey with Daryl, we created a game. He had me assign. I was open to it, to this homework assignment of really listing out and being honest with what my debt was. And I said this with Kush the other day too. But when I first did it, I listed $93,000, but I was not being honest with myself. I was $222,000. And what I learned in the old Jesse and how I used to be when things would pop up financially that were just like, a geothermal system blew up and had to, spend, get a loan out for that. I used to crumble in those situations. But being this type of commitment in my word at the very start of this journey, with Daryl, when I really got committed to it, it allowed me to think differently and more creatively on what kind of games can I create and look at money and my relationship with it differently. And what that's allowed me to do is the past 2 years since I started this game, allowed me each year to pay off and create an extra $40,000 a year to pay off that debt. I've paid off $80,000 in debt in 2 years, which is just incredible in my mind. And no matter if some little thing pops up here or there, or there's another big commitment I want to commit to, I'm not going to be afraid of, oh man, it's the end of the world, or how I used to think about those things. It's okay. I got this game, and I love how in our group here, and the beautiful relationships that we have, and the learnings and everything of just, and Daryl introduced it to me before I read it in the Steve's books and so on. But I've created the perfect system to be in the debt that I'm in, so I can create the perfect system to be out of the debt that I'm in, and all the others from here. So it's like when I shifted, my thinking and way of thinking around that, a lot of things were different. And I used to be so, and going back to thinking on things and what's really, created myself and my being, to Kushi's book of Sweet Sharing, you know, I used to be so empathetic to where if I like let it step on an ant or something, I'd like cry. I'd be, oh my gosh, I killed an ant. Very, very empathetic. And that's not saying I'm not anymore. It's just how I think around the things differently, or the actions or the words or the scenarios that might pop up or show up where I used to get frustrated or used to be over empathetic or whatever it is. I think around it differently and process it differently in real time. And it's daily practices that I work on, and what really grounds me each and every day, is reading my document and having it on my phone available if I just need to reset and level set, So um, got off on a tangent there, but yeah, just to add a little more color on that for you.
Yeah. This is great. I have a couple questions. When you say, you created a game, and it sounds like you've created different games. Do you have an example of what that might look like for somebody so they could have an idea in case they wanted to create their own game or be inspired by your game?
Yeah, one of our master classes, I can't think of his name. He's out in California and has restaurants. Uh,
Amir?
Amir, I think it was Amir. Uh, he said something that really resonated with me a while back, and it was of his daughter um, playing. She always has games and plays games with him, and even though it's the same game, the rules would be different and change. And it's like, why are we so always box ourselves into? Well, we have to do it this way or do it that way. And then I can't remember where else I heard, but it's just what really got you excited to go play a Nintendo or Sega game growing up as a kid, like there wasn't any reward in it other than just getting to that next level. And it's like, why can't I apply that still that childlike, that inner childlike mindset and framework into adult life? Like, what's the game I'm playing? Instead of being around behind a computer screen with a controller, it's like I'm the CEO, I'm the controller of my life. Like, how can I turn this into a fun game and conquer it? Like, okay, I got a geothermal system now that I got to pay off. How can I, what's the next level look like? What do I got to get there? What it's sort of like roller coaster tycoon, building your own roller coaster park or whatever, if you've ever done that, or The Sims or going back to that. It's just really gamifying things in a way, but in a real life manner to where you make it more fun and not this daunting task of, oh man, I got to get to level 8. Like, how am I going to get there? And my first coach that I ever had, CJ, that was our business coach at one of the startups. Like, he really helped break things down too. And I love the analogy, and it's used widespread. But just if you're focused on working out and you want to lose 30 pounds, that's not going to happen overnight. You can't do anything about it now. Like, I'm not going to lose that 30 pounds by tomorrow, but what are those steps and what's that goal? Like, give yourself 90 days. And what can you do in those 8 hours today to be more focused in on the present to create those results that you really want to see down the road? And just focus today. Like, what's important, what's right in front of us, this very moment that you and I, this conversation that we're having, how can it impact you? How can it impact myself? You know, and carry that on forward to that next level of games and whatnot that I'm playing in my life.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. This is wonderful because, I think it's so easy for people to not realize that they're perhaps treating something so seriously because they want it, or for them money might have an energetic charge to it, and those types of things. So I love that you're introducing this idea of, and you know what, it's funny, I never quite loved the word gamify, but I think what I'm getting out of what you're saying is to bring the spirit of it being a game to it, to make it fun, to make it a game. And I love that. I think that's great because it gets to add more spirit, more fun to it, more energy to operate from a different place rather than it's this thing that I have to do, or I'm treating it really seriously to try and get this result. And the other question that I have for you, which I think really ties to this empathy portion, because I can relate to being a very, very empathetic person. A question that I notice has been coming up through conversations that I've had with people is, even early on, right? Because you're sharing how you'll have conversations and they naturally progress. And I imagine, or at least what I've noticed from my experience in conversations, is at some point, as a coach, even in conversations, there's a place where even though you're being yourself, you're having these conversations with people, you probably do bring a level of depth, a level of intention to the conversation, almost perhaps maybe a level of invitation to move things forward. And I found that especially when someone's really empathetic, they don't necessarily want to, they want to create a client, they want to make a difference for somebody, and they don't want to find themselves doing something to somebody. And so I'm curious, even in these initial stages, is there a way that either you treat it as a game or what you found for yourself to still bring that depth, still bring that invitation, um, without without it feeling like you're doing something to somebody? Because I realize there's a particular thinking there, especially for people that might still be um, fresh to this idea of creating clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious what you found for yourself in your own journey.
Yeah. When I really ground myself of serving, like how can I serve this person and what does that look like?
Hmm.
And I'm not going to be able to serve everyone, even though I feel I can sometimes, and want to sometimes. But uh, you know, am I coming from a place of love, and am I truly coming from a place of service mindset with them? Example: one of my clients, uh, 2 years ago, he was probably 3 or 4 years old, 3 years older than me in college, and really good friend. Always looked up to him. Thought he was the coolest person. I want to be like him. Like just really amazing person. And 2 years ago, I reached out randomly. I hadn't talked forever, and just catching up on life. And again, I was just being myself, and I had no intentions. I was just like, who can I call to catch up with and just tell him what I'm up to in the world? Daryl challenged me to do that, and he was one of them. And um, I shared my story. And he's like, dude, he goes, I need that in my life. I go, need what? And he's like, dude, like just the path that you're on. Like I'm just going through so much right now. Losing business, going to divorce, like all of this stuff. And just stayed in touch. And for a year and a half, it was just like we tried to meet. He's like, oh, I want to get in person. I want to learn more. I want to get in person. And always open to it, but just our schedules always conflicted. Like there was no real commitment there. And then this past year in April, I called and left him a voicemail, a happy birthday voicemail. And he called me the next day. He's like, dude, he goes, you were the only person that called me on my birthday. And he's like, I know I've been saying this for 2 years, but can we meet? He goes, I want to hire you. I need coaching. Like, I want to do this. So, uh, we start talking and planning, and it was about October, the fall. I never once pushed it or just anything. Like, I wanted it to be on his terms, and when it felt comfortable for him. And he ended up, I've been coaching with him now since then, and making a big impact. Just he's really has been one of those learners and people that you just love working with because you just see them that they want that change. So I would say just real service oriented and being grounded in that, and always remembering coming from a place of love and coming from a place of service will get you so much farther than trying to force a conversation. Or like, yeah, I had to really unlearn my sales because I was usually my business development, high growth, sales, and everything. And just re-engineer my mind on different ways and tactics. I'm not selling someone anything.
Hmm.
And that was a challenge for me at the beginning. But really when I start to lean into just how can I serve this person and at what level, and then see where conversations go, that's when I start to naturally see people start to come in and I work with them.
Mm, yeah. And I really love that. And for somebody that's perhaps listening to this, and maybe this is new to them, this idea of service, because they might hear that service is listening to someone, and then that's it. And so you and I probably have very different ideas of service from the work that we've done compared to that. What's the way that you think of service before you're speaking with someone, or when you are speaking with someone, that might give them a flavor of some different ways that service can look like?
Man, great question. I love that. That's deep. Um, Being fully present with them, creating miracles with them. And what I mean by that is, when I'm intentional on places, like I'll have my clients meet me at, I'm not at the level where I can bring them to my house yet and make them travel all over the world. But you know, a very intimate, one-on-one, personal space that allows that person just to be an experienced being themselves. That's the type of service I like to create from the very beginning with the individual when I first had my first conversation with them, and being vulnerable and sharing my story with them, uh, just instantly creates a level of trust that they'll open up and like prime example. I mean, one verbatim the other day just said, like, I've never told anyone this, Jesse. And that was the first time meeting with them. And then to go on and continue on, and even if they didn't hire me, some reach out and say, hey, I just want to thank you. Like that conversation we had the other day at breakfast or whatever it was, like I really enjoyed that and needed that. And I appreciate you. And just, that level of service to me, is where I love to see the impact of the work that we do, on that level. Because, what I've been through the darkest places of the mind a person could possibly be in. I hate to see individuals go through that struggle. Hate's a strong word. I empathize for a person who has been in those deep dark places. And I it's taken me 20 years to really be open about this and share it all and everything. But like when you're, you know, in the mind and you're on top of a parking garage ready to step off, driving down, a boulevard where this tree might look good to crash into and make it look like an accident, or this pond would be good, make it look like an accident. Like when you're in those deep dark levels and you have no hope of when's that gonna end in your mind, like make it stop. Like I look back, I'm like, how the mind is so powerful. Uh and but I'm not the only one who has suffered and has gone through those things. And I know what's possible for everyone else. And if I can create that space for someone, to discover and find out, amazing. And even if it's not that deep for them, and it's a little, more of a surface level where they're struggling with how am I going to be a better leader at home, a better leader on the field or on the court, or a better leader in my position at work, a better father, a better parent, or whatever it is, you know, that's the level of service I come from in my mind of like, how can I create that space for them to figure out how to get there? So,
Yeah. Wow. And when you say to create that space, you're talking about being present in such a way to uh, create miracles, or for them to see what's possible in their life. Is there, I don't want to use the word approach, but is there a certain perhaps thinking or or way of being with that person then at that level of service than perhaps someone who's hearing service would simply say to someone, let's say they're hearing someone share these things, and they don't want to put pressure on somebody, and they're what they think is service might just be to say, I'm here for you. And what I'm hearing with you is that there's almost a certain level of service that you're present, um, and when you're with them, you're speaking something into that space between the two of you that perhaps creates something that they didn't see before, rather than them just knowing someone is there for them. Um, am I getting that right?
Yeah. I mean, it brings a sense of reality that they're not the only ones going through or struggling, and it makes a space that's very relatable for them in a way, and
Mm-hmm.
through intuition, and also um, silence can sometimes really create that space for them, and not, not over, talking. I really learned, listening skills through all of this work too. But
Mm-hmm.
Jamie does a great job too of really asking questions and creating that space. But yeah, I would just say that creating that space with them and just being with them allows them to start to feel a shift and felt truly heard. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Not saying they're not heard anywhere else in their life, but it's just like the complete non-judgmental, judge-free zone that this type of space that we're doing or having, and what I have had with Daryl or Kush and stuff, it busts down barriers and opens up so many avenues and realizations of blind spots that everyone has had, and still continue to have throughout their life. So,
Yeah, I love that because it sounds like there's a level of listening that is there that they probably don't get from many people or perhaps anyone in their life. So there's something, so there's the space for something to emerge. You're asking questions that perhaps they've never been asked before or considered or had the space to share. And I'm also hearing that when it's appropriate, you're having a real and honest conversation with them rather than um, somebody's who is perhaps how would I say this, sympathizing with somebody. It sounds like you're really it's what's that metaphor of the lawyer, the doctor, whoever it is, jumps it, yells down to somebody that's stuck in a hole,
oh
and then and then the friend jumps down there in the hole, and and they're like,
yeah,
Why'd you come
because
down?"
I've
He's
been
like,
there,
"I've
because
been
I've
here
been here before.
before."
Yep, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and so it sounds like you really bring that into the conversations that you're having, which allows really miracles to occur for somebody because it's rare for somebody to even have that appear in their life. And when you do that, it sounds like that is what perhaps is, we've talked about generating conversations. And if you just generate a conversation, but you're talking with someone and it's not, if it's just a sympathetic conversation, if it's just a catch up, that's nice, but there's something special that occurs in the experience that you're talking about, which is it's a conversation or experience unlike they're having with anyone else in their life. Do I have
Yep,
that correct?
yeah, absolutely.
And if somebody's listening to this and they're hearing these, the level of a conversation, it's no longer hey, my coach told me to connect with people and talk to them. It's I'm sincerely connecting with someone. I'm listening, I'm being with them, I'm having the real conversation with them that other people aren't having. It's about them, it's not about me. What do you find um, occurs from that for you? Is it like how does that shift your experience of business? Like who do you find that you're being, as opposed to who were you being originally when perhaps it was a strategy, versus who you're being when it's that level of connection?
I say authenticity. I mean, you can sniff out when someone's trying to sell you or, be real business like. When I'm at this level of being with an individual, it's more personalized and authentic and genuine to them that creates that level of comfort, I guess, of them being able to express fully what the challenges they may be facing or what they truly want to work on. And they really I really listen to the language that they use or that might keep showing up, um when they're talking about, "Oh, I was late to this or I was late to that." It's like, late, what's that mean?
Mm,
Dive into, I want to understand late more. And when they go into that, it's like, well, what systems do you have in place or whatever it is? That's just one small example. But that
yeah.
starts to really go into layers. And then that created an opportunity to suggest and offer a homework assignment. Say, hey, would you want to, create a schedule, block out your time, every single thing for your kids getting, so you don't show up late to your kid's ball game anymore, or whatever it is, conversation. This is a specific one that led into that. And then a few weeks go by, they're doing great. And then you get a message from their wife saying, hey, I've been trying to get him to schedule stuff like this for, I don't know what you said, but thank you. So, it's just like, those layers and really listening to the
Mm,
language that they have to say and everything can really um, change a person's, life drastically just by simple little words that keep showing up and stuff. And I
right.
do, just to let you know, I don't want to cut us short. I do have a commitment at 1 o'clock too, just to let you know. So.
Okay. Perfect. So, I guess in a couple words, what is a distinction that we could give for somebody? Because they might hear this and they might think, um, I'm doing something to somebody if I ask those questions. It sounds like it's a level of being. Are they being a coach wherever they go? Do I have that right?
Me or the client?
The someone who's listening who is a coach, they
Oh,
might
oh.
think they're doing something to someone if they're saying, "Oh, the homework assignment or this and that." Yeah.
I always offer, if they're open to it and agree to a suggestion. I'm never saying you got to do this, you got to do that. Um, and also in my personal life, I don't want to come off as Coach Jesse all the time because that'd be annoying to everyone. But it is who I'm being, and when I explain to them, this is who I'm being, and like I really make it clear that we're both in understanding before I even like suggest or give advice or whatever it is. Like I don't want to fall into that realm or be that kind of person. I really want to be intentional and um open to things as my clients would expect from me too. Like I don't want to ever put that pressure on them. So I'm very intentional on, hey, would it be okay if I suggested this? And I've learned a lot of that with Daryl. Daryl does a great job at doing that. So I'm excited to see what Daryl has to say tomorrow in our back to back things here. So
Cool. Perfect. Where can people find you, Jesse, if they wanted to get in contact with you?
jessehile.com or Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Jesse T. Hile. And then my business coaching, nextlevelguidance.com. So very accessible. Just commit to time and schedule, and I'll be there.
Perfect. And if anyone's looking for me, it is jmwhiteman.com. I appreciate it, Jesse. And thank you so much. See everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.